WNN. Talk 1470 is WWNN Pompano Beach and 95.3 FM W237BD Boca Raton. The Health and Wealth Radio Network. 1470 AM and 95.3 FM. The Health and Wealth Radio Network. Listen for Empowerment Psychic Hallie Elise. Tuesdays at noon. Talk 1470 AM and 95.3 FM WNN.
Seniors, Medicare open enrollment is quickly approaching. Call I Will Advisors for a free review of your existing healthcare policy and learn about all of your Medicare options. Call Debbie at 954-753-8080. 954-753-8080.
People are learning in a classroom how money is made from home at Online Trading Academy. Just how much?
$100, $200, $300. They were able to get to $500 a day in a little over 8 months. $500 a day, folks, is $10,000 a month.
Get classroom instruction on how money can be made from home and how risk is limited. Learn stocks, options, futures, forex. Learn step-by-step from professional traders at Online Trading Academy.
Everyone starts off very small baby steps. You know, if you can't average $100 a day, there's no way you're going to be able to make $300 a day or $3,000 a day in the markets.
Thousands have learned how money can be made from home with limited risk at Online Trading Academy. Attend a free half-day class to see how it works in Broward and Palm Beach. Online Trading Academy. Call now. 561-674-9800. 561-674-9800. That's 561-674-9800.
Talk health, talk wealth, talk politics, talk 1470 and 95.3 FM, WNN.
The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
This is Tanoa Lynn Poirier, and I want to welcome you to Comm-Unity Conversations on WNN 95.3 FM and 1470 AM. This show is about you. I want to hear your trials and triumphs, challenges and victories, and how you overcome obstacles every day in our dynamic industry. All callers are welcome to join Community Conversations. This is where we'll discuss all things in common. We'll discuss managers, directors, vendors, and owners. Let's elevate the conversation. Raise the bar. Start here, now. Welcome to Community Conversations with Tanoa. Happy Friday. I was just talking with a very special guest whom I'm going to introduce in a minute. It feels like a month week to me. So for all of you who've had a really long week, you made it, you did it. Sit back, relax, listen. I've got such a treat for you today with my guest. I want to thank my sponsor, Trusted Construction. They will take your project from project conception to completion. You can reach them at 561-582-5758, and you'll hear more about them shortly. Allow me to introduce you to Jill Coulter from Resolve Mediation. She is a rock star, for real. And we're going to talk about mediation, problem and conflict resolution. But first, I want to say welcome, Jill.
Thank you, Tanoa.
Thank you.
I want to say hello, Tanoa. I always want to say that.
That's www.hellotanoa.com.
Exactly.
So, Jill, introduce yourself to the listeners. Tell them who you are and what you do.
Well, as Tanoa had said, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm appreciative. This
pleasure.
is a wonderful, wonderful platform.
Thank you.
In community association industry. I'm Jill Coulter. I am a Florida Supreme Court certified civil and appellate mediator. My mediation practice focuses on community association disputes and property damage issues, and it keeps me busy.
Very. One of the things we talked about before is seems to be the terms mediation and arbitration seems to be used interchangeably. Can you help our listeners understand those differences?
Absolutely. Excellent question, often asked by many people. Mediation and arbitration are forms of alternative dispute resolution, and that's the key. And we call it alternative dispute resolution, ADR. So you'll hear that oftentimes. The distinguishing factor between the two, which I'll explain the arbitration aspect first, and then we'll go into the powerful mediation. which I love. In an arbitration, they can be court-ordered, voluntary, binding, and non-binding. And in a nutshell, not to go into the complete details and legalese of it all, because far be it from me to offer legal advice. I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV. Disclaimer. And you go with your attorney or without your attorney. The parties do come together. The arbitration is scheduled. And there can be one arbitrator at the arbitration. There can be a panel of 3. And there are pros and cons to that. You can have one arbitrator who perhaps often arbitrates for certain companies, and although they should be a neutral, there can be a little bias there with the people they're working with. If you have a panel of 3, the 3 can be in all different places, which on the positive side is fantastic because you'll have alternative points of view. But essentially what the arbitrator does is they're looking at the facts and details of the case. So if you have a liability with your pool maintenance company, for example, and typically when you've entered into that contract with that maintenance company, there's an arbitration clause in your contract. Yep. So if there is an issue in dispute or a slip and fall, as I said, liability, and you've got an insurance company involved, and what is the value of the case? What is the loss? All these details, your arbitrator will be taking into account. But the distinguishing factor between the mediator and the arbitrator, or the mediation and the arbitration, is that that arbitrator or that panel makes the determination and settles your case. So although you're participating in the arbitration, they are acting essentially like judge and jury.
Interesting. Very interesting. So then take us through a mediation process. So, for example, there is a conflict between 2 parties and it needs to get resolved. And your role in that mediation is what? Okay,
so allow me just for a moment to discuss the differences between the arbitration and the mediation, as you asked me to.
Yes.
Okay, so in mediation, although the hearings or the mediation conference and the arbitrations are essentially similar, the mediation, the parties come to the mediation with self-determination. It's all about you and your issue. So you have the dispute at hand. In Florida, we have our statutes, Section 720, that guide us and require pre-suit mediation in homeowner associations. Right. Not the same for condos. Condos, via the DBPR, Department of Business and Professional Regulation, do have an arbitration process.
So I just want to put a pin there. What Jill is saying, that in HOAs, that arbitration process is mandated.
Correct.
Right? So you have to go through that.
I'm sorry, in condos.
In 720 or 718?
In 718. In 720, pre-suit mediation
is mandated.
Correct.
Okay. So that means that and that's statute 718. That means that before you go to trial, you've got to go through this arbitration process first. It's mandated. There's no way around it.
Correct.
Okay. And in 720, it is
the same, pre-suit mediation
but
required.
It is not mandated.
By statute. Pre-suit mediation prior to litigation. Or
720?
judicial intervention, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, well then I misunderstood that. So I did know in condo, but I didn't think it was the same in HOA. It is.
It is.
Oh, okay. I learned something today. So in both 718 and 720, and this is important, listeners, in Florida, is that in both statutes, in HOAs, horizontal communities, and 718 vertical communities, it is mandated arbitration before you go to trial.
You can have HOA arbitration. If you get into the elements of the DBPR, yes, you will see that. But in 720, for homeowner association communities, pre-suit mediation prior to litigation.
Interesting. Okay.
Correct.
All right.
And not to get too heavily involved, then you've got mediation for timeshares, apartments, and mobile home parks.
Right. But for most of the listeners, it's going to be condos or HOAs.
Condos or HOAs.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
Good information, listeners. Yes.
So, and thank you for clarifying that.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. So, if you do look in Florida Statute 720, the language and what someone who wants to bring a mediation to the fore is listed right there, and you essentially just fill in the blanks. And you can request a mediation on your own, pro se, or through your attorney. And again, that goes to your self-determination. So oftentimes I have been called by a resident or a board requesting a mediation. Now, the fine line between that is, again, I'm not the attorney. And even if an attorney is a mediator, which so many are, and I want to touch upon that in a little bit, the mediator is the neutral third party facilitating the negotiation to settle this dispute.
Okay, repeat that, please.
The mediator is the neutral third party who is brought aboard to facilitate the negotiation of the dispute.
Okay, and that is your role.
That is the role of the mediator.
Okay, excellent.
So converse to what we talked about with an arbitrator, the arbitrator will make the final judgment.
Mm-hmm.
The mediator cannot do that, and by the rules of ethics and the codes that mediators are required here in the state of Florida. So we are certified under the Supreme Court of the state of Florida, and the Dispute Resolution Center up in Tallahassee oversees mediation in the state of Florida, and there are rules that we need to abide by. So I can never go into a mediation telling someone where to go, what
really
to
important.
do,
Right.
what they'll lose, what a good decision is. That's a big no-no.
Right. That we go back to that term, self-determination. Right.
Self-determination.
Exactly. Really
Right.
important. Right. So we broadly understand the difference between the two, right? So that's going to take many more shows to sort of drill down on a granular level.
Exactly.
But I think because those terms are used interchangeably, we just wanted to give a broad outline of the difference between those two disciplines. Oftentimes, arbitration is binding, right? It's the last. You get what you got, basically, right? And with you, that is with mediation or a company like Resolve Mediation. That is not the end of the process. That's pretty much
Once
the
that
difference.
agreement is reached, it's is
binding.
Yes.
Right. But the parties make the decision. That's not made by an arbitrator.
Correct.
Yeah.
So when I do, what I'm trained to do, and use the skills in order to reach that agreement, and mind you, I know we can't get into all of the aspects of mediation in the 30 short minutes we have, but the four important elements in mediation is the self-determination, the confidentiality, the full authority, so the people that are there at the mediation have the authority to settle. And also, you have to remember, not every mediation settles. Mediations can settle in part, settle in full. You can come to an impasse, which again takes those skills and abilities to get the parties through.
Pass that impasse.
Impasse, and there might be no settlement. But oftentimes I will find that, or I'll have an attorney for one of the parties say to me, don't write up your report yet if we haven't settled, because the mediation exposes some information that the parties never knew about. And they might reconsider, and I follow up with my parties a few days later or a week later. Hey, how's it going? What are you doing? Because when I walk out of the mediation, it's done for me.
Interesting.
But I will ask them, and they will say, we were able to negotiate. We settled on this one little issue we're having a problem with, and it's all good.
That's positive.
Yeah.
So it ended, and you're like, well, that was it. But you follow up, and they're like, no, actually, as you said, it exposed some things that the other party didn't know.
Correct.
There were some extenuating circumstances, maybe, or just what often happens with people in communication or lack thereof. They didn't understand what the other side was saying. Mm-hmm. And that often happens when you read something and you filter it through your own pain or whatever, and you're like, I can't. And you're insulted by something that you think the other party meant to say. At any rate, you go back to saying, well, I didn't realize that you felt that way. Or when you're hearing somebody saying, and I don't know what the issue is, that is not at all how I meant it, or that is not what I meant to do, and here's how I meant it to go. And then you're like, because people at the end of the day are people, right? And so sometimes just being able to think about that process, replaying that in their heads, makes a resolution after the fact.
You're spot on.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Terrific. That's
Absolutely.
terrific. We are going to have to take a short break. Jill's going to come back right after, and then she's going to remind you how you can reach her, and we'll see you on the other side. What is on everyone's mind these days when they think of starting a project in their home or community? Where can I find a qualified, certified, and licensed contractor I can trust? Allow me to introduce you to Trusted Construction. They have provided expert construction and roofing services in South Florida since 2009. Trusted Construction has earned a reputation for superior, consistent, dependable service. Trusted Construction will guide you from project conception to completion. Call 561-582-5758. Tell them Tanoa sent you. Imagine having one place you can call for all your residential needs, whether it's housekeeping, repairs, remodeling, pet sitting, laundry, or anything else your heart desires. La Concierge Services is your answer. Our qualified staff is carefully chosen, experienced, licensed, and insured. They are prompt, professional, and courteous. La Concierge Services is honored to serve in South Florida's most exclusive communities. With La Concierge Services, you have a full-service, personal concierge. We would love the opportunity to earn your business. Call 561-819-2059 for more information. La Concierge Services, your personal concierge. Welcome back. This is Tanoa Lynn Poirier with Community Conversations. And I want to remind you that this show is about you. If you'd like to join the show, you can call us at 888-565-1470. Let's get back to the show. Welcome back. We were just chatting at the break, and the beauty of doing this show is that I'm learning along with you. So this has been really interesting information. We're definitely going to have Jill back because she is a treasure trove of information, and she's super fun. But I think we're going to have to sort of eat this elephant, as I like to say, a bite at a time so that we can understand. And this show in 30 minutes helps you understand a little bit more about how your community works. One of the things we also wanted to talk about is what kinds of conflicts broadly do people bring to mediation in community associations?
Well, broadly, the range is...
So just give me top three.
Here.
Top three.
So, well, I don't know if there's a top three, but I'll give you three examples.
Okay,
of some of the mediations that I've participated in. Very, very simple. You are a resident in a community association. You think there's something funny going on with your board. You're asking questions. Money is flowing out of your reserves, and you want to know why, and you're not getting the answers that you want. So here in the state of Florida, per the statute, 720, which we just touched upon, you can request your records. And there are, again, nuances to that. I'm not getting into the legalese of it all.
But they're your records.
But they're yours.
Right.
And there are guidelines and rules that are mandated by the statutes that allow you to request those records. There's a time frame, there's a cost, and if the board doesn't respond within so many days, a fine is imposed after those days, and boom, you wind up in mediation.
Interesting. Right. For a records request, which is a simple process, and what happens is an owner has some concerns about funds, invoicing a contractor, board transparency, and they'll request their records, meaning they're a member of the association, and there are records that are meant to be available and open to them upon request. Now, managers can say, you know, it's not, you can't come at 9 o'clock in the morning when we're just getting in, but you have to make an appointment, and then, but there should be at no time any resistance by any manager to offering the owners access to their information.
Correct. And going to what you said, there are rules about making the request.
Right.
If there's a fee, electronic production, all sorts of information when you're making that request. Now, I do want to add something, if you don't mind.
Please.
So, although this is a South Florida show, this show is on social media.
Right.
So, I would suggest to whomever's listening in another state, and hopefully Some people are, because
They definitely are.
They definitely are. You better be. I would suggest that you you could simple Google search in your state, community association, and mediation. Simple words.
Terrific.
Yeah, that can lead you to what you do in your state, because every state is different.
That's a great suggestion. Because this is just from the research I've done on the past shows, I can see that it is available and watched throughout the country. So that's
nice.
Really terrific. So you're going to be a star, darling. One of the things that I know happens between neighbors is conflicts between neighbors. It is either a line of property dispute, or somebody seems to be getting special treatment, or somebody's continually has a dog without a leash, and those kinds of conflicts. Do those wind up in mediation? Is that something that you've had experience with?
Yes,
I can
of course,
just imagine.
Of course. You can imagine what goes on in mediation.
Right.
But I'll speak to the point of what you said about the dog off the leash.
Okay.
Really, really common, typical, and interesting. Had a mediation. The board was at one side of the table. The owner was on the other. They had their attorney, of course.
Interesting.
She did not, which is fine. It's not atypical. And it was an issue about a big dog that would get off the leash and run through the community and bark at everybody and scare everybody. And they've given her notice, and they weren't responsive to her responses. So we wind up at the mediation conference, only to discover that really the board and the woman, they really weren't contentious. They were just set on their position. And that's understandable. And typically, Tanoa, in mediation, I find, and I can't speak for everyone, but I find that it always comes down to some sort of emotion.
Always.
It's emotion.
Always. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well, this really touched a soft spot, because the woman had been watching the dog for her son, who was an active duty deployed overseas.
Yes. So there was some transference happening there, right? There was some added responsibility, and then she attached the fact that her son was away and in danger to this animal that she needed to protect for her son, right?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
There and sometimes it's always about communication. And we were speaking, I think, in the break about sometimes when you text, email, or in some electronic communication, people filter that through their own emotion at the time. So sometimes you could say something very efficient in a text or email, but the emotion attached to it when it's received by your recipient depends on what kind of mood they're in. So it's difficult to hear the inflection in the voice, to hear the motivation behind what someone is trying to say. And for the entire story to have gotten out in this case, where if she would have just said, listen, let me tell you what's going on. Exactly. But very often there's a vulnerability attached to that. And so maybe you don't want to share that up front. But that is a fascinating case, because I can see how somebody who was, I've got to keep this dog safe and alive because that means my son will be safe and alive and come back and get the dog, right? So you can just imagine that.
Nice, valid point. And the beauty of that was we were able, now that information was shared, but the beauty was they still didn't want her to have the dog. They still felt threatened, or the dog was threatening to the community. So the agreement, not that I'm speaking out of turn here, but essentially the agreement came down to, you could have the dog until his date of return. If his deployment is extended, then you must find alternative place for the dog to be housed.
Interesting.
So this way she knew that this was okay for now, but there was a compromise and a negotiation to tie it up all in the bow knot, should the circumstances change.
So that was a successful mediation. All the parties.
Well, I think all mediations are successful. They might not settle, but there's a exchange of information and communication.
That's a good point.
And you have the people at the table. Even if one is yelling and screaming, there is an exchange of information. And that's why, as I stated before, sometimes after the fact, even if there was an impasse or no agreement, 24, 48, 48 hours, 5 days later, there might just be an agreement.
Wow. That's the piece that's really new for me. But the beautiful ending, if you will, where we wrap it up in a bow, is where everyone's heard and everyone says, okay, well, you can keep the pet up to this point, and then you have to find something else. Now, everybody gave something up, and everybody won something. Right. And that is the best outcome. And the thing I try to say all the time is that we have to remember that everything we do is about people. Right?
Exactly.
So it's about people. A lot of things are attached to emotion. Communication being the most difficult thing in a time when kind of the public discourse is less than civil. That tends to filter down. But at the end of the day, what we want to do is help people. That's why we're doing what we do.
And if you don't mind me putting a little cherry on that sundae you
by
just
all
built,
means, yes.
This is community conversation,
right.
And this is one of my biggest points that I make in a mediation. We are in a community. Right. We live amongst one another, whether our business partners are coming in to take care of that community or you're my neighbor and we have a dispute. We always have to pass each other in the street or meet each other at the board meeting. So even if you don't settle that dispute or you settle it in part, just keep in mind that we're neighbors and we're together and we live within the community. And we want the unity within that community.
Oh, that was good. I love it. And that's what I'm striving for, is that, yes, we all have to live together. We work there, you live there, but we want to bring back the unity and community, get to know your neighbors, have good communication, resolve conflicts. And I want this lovely lady to tell us again how you can get in touch with her.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Again, my name is Jill Coulter. Resolve Mediation is my company specializing in community association disputes. You can reach me. I have no problem if you want to call me at 561-628-8476, 561-628-8476, and reach me or any of my social media on my website, resolvemediationinc.com.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And for those of you in South Florida, even if you just have questions that we did not get answered here, you would be amenable to allowing people just to call and say, hey, I just got the tail end of that. Can you explain that to me?
Always happy to share the information, always. And if you do find yourself in a community association dispute, I'm happy to also extend a 30-minute free consultation.
Oh, even better.
Yes.
I want to thank my sponsor, Trusted Construction. You can reach them for all of your construction needs, 561-528-5758. I want to extend the biggest, fattest, sweetest thank you to Jill. She's definitely coming back if she'll agree. And I want to thank you for listening, joining us again. Your time is precious. Thank you for spending it with us. I want you to have a great weekend and be a blessing to somebody today. It was fun. Let's do it again next week, 5 o'clock. Bye. You have been listening to Community Conversations with Tanoa Lynn Poirier. It is my honor to host this program, and I appreciate you listening. We have an exciting show planned for you next week, so mark your calendars and join me every Friday at 5 p.m. on WNN 95.3 FM and 1470 AM. We look forward to hearing from you, our listeners. It's all about learning, sharing, and teaching. We're all in this together. Until next time, be a blessing to someone and endeavor to persevere.